Cheers.
Cheers. Oh shit, that is a big ass glass. Oh my god. Oh shit, that's like the fucking size of your head.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hey guys. Hey y'all. I don't never know.
And we're back.
And we're here. Hey y'all, what is up? Welcome back to the Red Rum and Red Wine podcast, the podcast where we talk about murder, mystery, and mishaps. Here are two of them right here. Here's Kristen.
And here's Sara.
Ooh, if you're hearing this, then that means we fucked up. Either fucked up or had some technical difficulties.
It means we fucked up, we had technical difficulties.
We got too drunk,
like
something happened. It's just life. Life, Kristen and Sara style. So, yes, this is a story that we have pre-recorded sometime in the past, in advance, Yep. And yeah.
And so you're listening to archived Kristen and Sara today.
Mm-hmm. Us in the past. I don't even know.
So that means you're in the future.
Yeah. What a fucking Matrix world that is. I had a glitch in the Matrix, I feel like, today. I've been having weird moments where, like, it's like the lights go out, but it's like the fucking sun. And I know that most people would call that a blink, but it's like when I swear that my eyes are open, and it's like the world goes out for a second. I'm like, whoa, what just happened?
Whoa.
Anywho, no, I am not on drugs. I'm just drinking a White Claw, just chilling back, hanging out, relaxing.
Shout out,
Yeah.
White Claw.
What are you drinking today?
I am drinking a Brut Rosé Champagne.
Oh, I didn't know.
I
it was
think it's
rosé.
called Sophia. Yeah, fun fact, Nicolas Cage's father makes it.
Yeah, I didn't even know he had a dad.
Yeah, neither did I. Because apparently Nick Cage is a stage name, of course.
Uh-huh.
So his last name is apparently Coppola.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
This is the guy who makes National Treasure, right? The guy who's...
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The guy who's ringing me up at the store told me that.
Oh, I thought you were about
honestly,
to say Nick Cage was the one ringing you up at the store. I was like, damn, I know he went downhill. I didn't know it was that far down.
No, I honestly was like not paying attention to what he was saying, to be honest. And all I heard him talking about, like, someone Coppola and Nick Cage, and I was like, what?
That's pretty cool.
I just said something like, oh yeah, I've never had this before. And he was like, yeah, well, Nick Cage is a stage name. It's Coppola is him and his dad. And I was like, oh, okay.
Just love when people
Cool.
give me random facts of life.
Yeah, so yeah, it's all right. It's kind of not bad.
Not bad, not bad. Well, speaking of random facts of life, it's not really random, but it is factual. My story.
Yay. Oh, cool.
Is that a good segue? I don't even know. It's what happened. It's fine. Yeah, so today's story actually comes from Reddit. Well, not the story, but me getting the idea for the story. So I want to say thanks to my dude Drop King on Reddit. Love the name. But yeah, they posted an article done by Janet Wilson who is a Free Press staff writer. And it's basically this article that talks about a discussion that happens between two jury people in the courtroom that are basically like debating this case. And when I read the article, I thought it was really interesting. I had honestly never heard of this case, and I looked into it and my mind was fucking blown. So I decided to bring it here today. So today I'm going to be talking about Benjamin Atkins, otherwise known as the Woodward Corridor Killer.
Ooh. Okay. The name sounds a little familiar, but I'm not sure yet.
So he was like, it made news. He was, I say it later, but the FBI had dubbed him like the world's fastest serial killer. He had killed 11 women in the span of 9 months between December of 1991 and August of 1992. So the reason you would think that this case would be very well known, and of course, like, that's a lot of women. That is a huge amount of that's a huge amount of women to be dead in such a short amount of time. But unfortunately, the women that were killed were mainly sex workers and women of color, and Benjamin Atkins was a person of color as well. So I think those details really kind of like hyped down the case, or like kind of really buried the case. Like, it didn't give it a lot of national attention, which is really upsetting. And
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, and it does play a lot into the story, which I'll go into later on, of like them catching him and whatever. So I'm going to start my story actually in the courthouse while they are debating. Or I'm actually going to start with the story that the article I read is talking about. So the story starts off with juror Deborah Evans, and she is sitting in the room that they send the jurors to basically say, like, oh, you're guilty or not guilty. And she's
to deliberate.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. So they got sent to the room. They're in their little room deliberating what is going to be Benjamin Atkins' verdict. And as juror Deborah Evans is sitting there, she's thinking to herself, there's no way that I can convict Benjamin Atkins of murder. There's no way that I can convict him guilty. And it's not necessarily the fact that she was denying his guilt. Like, she knew that he did what he did. That wasn't the question about it. But she was more so wanting to give him innocent, or like guilty or not guilty by reason of insanity. There you go. She wanted to give him not guilty by reason of insanity. So during the months of the trial, she had heard Atkins' horrible upbringing. She had seen this man in court kind of wither away. She would see him rock in his chair, and she really just couldn't see herself giving him a guilty verdict. She felt really bad about it. And when you hear about his childhood, you can kind of understand why she might think that. So Benjamin was born Benjamin Tony Atkins on August 26th of 1968 in Detroit, Michigan, and he was the youngest of 2 sons. Now, he had a really rough upbringing, so his father had actually abandoned him and his family shortly after he was born, and his mother had actually worked as a sex worker, and while she was a sex worker, she had gotten into drug use and formed an addiction out of that. So while having to deal with his mother's addiction problems and the pain of his father abandoning the family, Benjamin would decide that he couldn't take it anymore and actually decided to run away from the house in 1970. And this would lead to a series of events which I couldn't really find a direct timeline, but somehow he ends up getting sent to an orphanage out of this. So I'm assuming like he probably got picked up by cops or something, and when he couldn't give information for the family or whatnot, they just ended up sending him to an orphanage, or he either went straight to one.
What his home was like. And
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, and he went away voluntarily, so it's kind of hard to say if like they would send him back or if he would say like, I just don't want to go. But either way, this orphanage would turn out to be just as worse, if not way worse, than his life at home. So Atkins would find himself the main target of the young boys who were at the orphanage, and they would put him under a tremendous amount of physical and sexual abuse.
Fuck.
And
I'm sorry, how old was he in 1970, like when he went to the orphanage?
So he was born in 68.
Oh, okay. Damn.
No, that does not make sense.
I was like, he ran away at 2 years old.
Well, I think it was in the 70s. So I know I said 1970, but he did run away in the 70s. It doesn't say exactly what year that he had ran away, but I know it would say around age 10 he had a really traumatic experience, which I later go into. So somewhere around the age of 10. I know he was at the orphanage for a few years, like quite a long time. So it's hard to say exactly, but I know at least from the age of 10 he was in that place.
Gotcha.
So after experiencing the abuse from the boys at the house, like even turning to the employees, he would find no help from them and would even add to his trauma by abusing them themselves. It was even said when he was 10 that Atkins would be raped by his own caseworker.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So like the person that you have the most trust in to help this child fucking just traumatize the shit out of them.
That makes me so angry. You're supposed to be helping these children.
Yeah, it's disgusting. He would even go on to describe an event when he was 15, when he would wake up and basically look down and see that there was a man performing oral sex on him without his permission, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at least from like 10 to 15, he was in this orphanage. So around 5 years, he's dealing with daily like beatings. The boys would either be physically or sexually abusing them, at least every day.
Shit.
Finally, after the 5 years of being there, he had managed, so I guess he was there when he was 10. So after 5 years of being there, he managed to escape and at that point decided to run back to his mother's house. Because he obviously had nowhere to go at this point. He's 15.
Yeah.
So he would describe that things would get slightly better once he got to the house and how he lived with his brother and his mother. But then one day he came to the shocking realization that his mother was a sex worker. Like up until this point, he had no idea when he walked in on his mother having sex with a client in their home. And this was apparently a very common occurrence that the brother and Benjamin just like had to get used to. And it was even said that he would be forced to go work with her and that he would often sit in the back seat while his mother performed tricks up in the front.
Oh my God. So he just went to work with her or he went to work with her?
I don't think it was anything like that. I think it was basically him just watching her or like witnessing her do work. Like I guess she didn't trust him at home alone, or maybe the house was the only place that she could work. Like
gotcha. Yeah.
Like I know later on he would he used the excuse that he would go into prostitution himself. I don't really know if that's true or not, but from what I read, he didn't do any prostitution at that age.
Okay.
Or sex work, I should say, sorry. So it would be from here that his hatred for sex workers would really grow. Like he really started to hate his mother and in return would hate anyone around him that was a sex worker. Like as soon as he would find out that fact about him, it didn't matter. Like he just automatically hated that person.
Damn.
So disgusted by her actions, he would yet again leave the house, but this time he wouldn't go to an orphanage. He would just turn to the streets for comfort, and that is where he would find drugs himself and become an addict himself as well. So it's kind of hard to see his job timeline from there. He would go to work like a pizza cook or any kind of like labor jobs that didn't require any massive amount of skill. But for the most part, he was homeless, and in the early 90s, when the crack cocaine epidemic hit Detroit, Atkins found himself right in the middle of that and found himself being a really heavy user.
Damn.
He would later describe that it was mixing his crack smoke with the warmth of liquor that not only gave him an enjoyable experience, but a great way to survive the cold streets of the city.
Oh, shit. It's another perspective on it.
It's... Like, I remember...
Like, yeah, I like to get high, but it keeps me warm.
I remember one time... Oh, my God. Sorry, Grandma. One time we were driving... I was driving in the car with my grandparents, and it was cold, and she sees a homeless person, and we were talking about like, oh, you can give him money, and she's like, no, just give him a bottle of liquor. It's gonna keep him warmer than anything. And it's like, oh my god, Grandma. Oh, it's good stuff. But yeah, I mean, the liquor for sure I know works. The crack smoke, I can't speak for that personally, but you gotta do what you gotta do to survive, I guess. So most of the people that he would meet actually would speak rather fondly of him, said like he was a pretty nice guy. Although when he got drunk or high, he of course would show signs of an antisocial personality disorder and had a lot of misogynistic behavioral traits. And just for reference, I looked at a photo and I thought of him as such a big dude. I mean, he's big, I guess. He's 5'5" and 175 pounds. So he's like average. He's not ginormous, like the giant that I thought when I first saw his photo. Because he looks very beefy when he's first arrested, but then like later on in court, he kind of slims down a bit, I guess, so he looks more his size.
So he's 5'5"?
Yeah. That's one article that I read, and I'm like, damn, that's pretty short. But so, and it kind of makes sense. So his first attack that ever occurred was in October of 1991. Atkins it's kind of like, I read different articles and they say different things, but either way, he ends up meeting a sex worker named Donna, who was 36 at the time. Now, Donna isn't her real name, and you can find her real name if you go online, but in one article I read, she wanted to keep it anonymous, so for the sake of that, I'm just going to call her Donna out of respect.
Donna.
So she either accepted money from him for sex, or she was a drug addict, and they kind of like hung out in abandoned buildings together and did drugs. Either way, they would go into a vacant Highland Park restaurant that Atkins would attack Donna. He would rape and sodomize her, and there would be like a brief moment of pause, and Donna would say that in that moment she knew that the next step would be Atkins attempting to kill her. So she, completely naked, ran out of the building and was like fighting him off viciously.
Oh my God.
Thank God someone just happened to be walking by when I guess they were out of the building, kind of like struggling near the doorway. And this person would basically like scare Atkins from attacking her further. And Donna was able to run away and get away with her life.
Go, Donna.
Yeah.
Go. Run, Donna, run.
Go, Donna, go. Yeah. So, like, I don't really know how large Donna is, because I know, like we said, he was just 5'5", but it would be at that point that Atkins would realize, like, I need to go for smaller women, or I need to go for, like, weaker women who are maybe, like, a bit more drugged up. And it would come to that realization of like, I can't leave them alive. It was also after this that he supposedly started carrying a condom around, though he wouldn't carry it all the time, but sometimes. It was hard to say though if this was him trying to avoid getting an STD, or if it was for him to not leave evidence behind, like DNA.
Right.
Because he does that.
I mean, either way, a condom would be a good idea. Yeah.
If you're gonna, not to give you tips on how to commit a crime, but yeah, if you're like gonna rape these women, carrying a condom is probably smart. And it is, I don't know when he got it, but Benjamin Atkins does get HIV at some point in his life.
Okay.
Because he is HIV positive when he goes to jail.
Okay.
Spoiler, he goes to jail. So
yeah. I wonder if he knew at all if or when he contracted it, or when they just like they just like tested him.
I just know that he got it. It says nothing about how he could have potentially contracted it or when he did. So it's just an interesting thing. Like, obviously, if you have HIV, you're not worrying about getting an STD when you're raping someone. So it would be more so to not leave DNA evidence behind. But It was just an interesting fact that I read.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you could get further STDs, but also you would give the person HIV.
Well, you're killing them right after.
Yeah, true.
I mean, just I'm sorry, but it doesn't really matter. Doesn't in that case? Yeah, you can raw dog it. It's
probably
fine.
For the DNA stuff.
Yeah, for the DNA for sure. So unfortunately, after this, it would only take him 2 months after the attack on Donna for Benjamin to get the urge to attack again. So this time, his victim would not get away. And on December 14th of 1991, he would strangle and kill Debbie Ann Friday in Highland Park. Now, she had been reported missing on December 8th. So, and you're going to find the trend, you do not find a exact date with these women when they died. Sometimes you will get a missing date, but for the most part, it's just when their body was found. And a lot of times...
So she could have been killed, like, when she went missing on the 8th, but she was discovered on the 14th.
Yeah, and it's not, like, we don't know if when she was reported missing, if that was for real the last day that she had been alive, out and about, you know, because that's just when the last time someone saw her or been reported missing. So she could have been missing before that. Either way, her body was found on the 14th, and the bodies, when they were found, were so often badly decomposed that it was hard for them to get, like, proper dates and stuff on it. So
shit.
A couple of weeks later, on December 30th, the body of Bertha Jean Mason would be discovered in an abandoned building, and she was strangled to death.
Ugh.
Now, Bertha had been reported missing after going to the store, and I couldn't get an exact date on that, but Bertha was 5 months pregnant at the time of her murder.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Benjamin, that is fucked.
Yeah. Like, you can clearly see that she's pregnant at 5 months.
Sorry, I'm bubbling on the insides.
Yeah. It's because you're boiling with anger from the inside. I am too. Shortly after this, on January 3rd of 1992, while workers were demolishing a building, they would come across the body of 36-year-old sex worker Patricia Cannon George. Now, Patricia had actually been put on a wanted list in early December of 1991. She had been caught in some kind of drug den bust in Woodward Corridor, and basically after she got put on the wanted list, she kind of like laid low, and no one had really heard from her since. So it's kind of hard to say like when exactly she went missing from early December into January 3rd. But Atkins would actually reveal that Patricia was his first kill, not Debbie Ann Friday like everyone had thought. So Debbie Ann had been discovered on December 14th, so we know that Patricia was killed before then.
Right.
And he would also say that him and Patricia were basically smoking crack together in an abandoned building when he, for whatever reason, like as soon as the drug hit his system, he became enraged and would rape and then choke her to death when she tried to leave. Later, on January 25th of 1992, the sodomized and strangled body of 39-year-old Vicky Truelove would be found. Now, at this point, obviously, police are becoming aware of the fact that there's a serial killer on their hands. They have found, like, I think I just said 4 or 5 bodies. It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
They would even go on to indeed capture this serial killer and then let him go. Because, you know,
what the fuck?
That's just how the world works. So, a lieutenant in the 13th precinct, which is the Woodward precinct, took a crew to search the area of the killings in late January. And they actually found Benjamin Atkins, the guy who did all of these killings, but obviously at the time they had no idea. They would find him asleep in a vacant building. So they would wake him up, bring him into questioning. Obviously Atkins is going to deny doing anything. So he was like, no, I didn't do this. I'm just sleeping here. I'm just homeless. I'm just a crack addict. Like, I'm just another guy on the street.
Sorry.
They would have no sufficient evidence at the time, and they would just have to let him go. And so they just put his name on the suspect list, and were like, okay, you can. I mean, I get it. I get it, but I'm like, you fucking had him. You fucking had him.
Yeah.
It's just, like it could have stopped right there. It could have stopped a lot sooner, actually. I won't get into that, but it's, It, of course, wouldn't take long after this. Being picked up by the cops did nothing to deter Benjamin, because on February 17th of 1992, the bodies of 3 women were found in a Monterey hotel in Highland Park. At the same time.
Okay.
3 women.
3?
In separate rooms.
What the fuck?
3 women on the same day were just found in separate rooms, dead. So you have 34-year-old Valerie Chalk, 23-year-old Janita Hardy, and a Jane Doe, who to this day has yet to be identified.
Holy shit.
All we know, all that I could find, is that she was around 15. 15 years old.
Ooh, goosies. Okay.
I have
where's
I got
that familial DNA evidence at to compare to, yo?
I know. Where's the fucking where's your parents for like wondering where their baby? It's just like I got goosebumps 3 times reading that. It's just like
anybody
so upsetting. To this day they haven't identified her, and it's just it's sad because he went for these women that he knew would not be cared about. He knew that, like, even though some of them were reported missing, it's like, especially, it goes on to say, like, Detroit, hi, if you live in the U.S., then you know Detroit's not the best. If you don't live in the U.S., Detroit is, like, not the best. It went bankrupt. Like, has a lot of crime in that town. I know, like,
not very stable, to say the least.
They had like over 800 like tips that they were trying to go through, and I know at the time that these murders were going on, they had like 129 other murders, I think I read in an article.
Holy
so
shit.
There was a lot of crime going on. I mean, it's just utter chaos right now. So he was just
and of course the murders of, like, you know, sex workers usually don't gain as much attention from authorities on trying to, you know, get them justice. And this is the 90s. With all the other shit going on, you can imagine where their focus was, you know?
Not here. It's the 90s. And, like, I know, I think I had written it later on down, but it's kind of surprising because, you know, I was a child in the 90s. I wasn't aware of, like, my surroundings pretty much. Like, I was just fucking drooling and sucking my thumb. So it's really surprising to read this article. Like, Benjamin Atkins declares himself later on that he's gay. And that's, like, one of his excuses is, like, oh, I'm gay. There's no way I could have committed these crimes.
Okay. So that's why he was into sodomizing, I bet.
Yeah, I think it really was, because almost all of his victims were sodomized. So, but when he was interviewing with the cops, the cop, and this was totally okay for you to say because it was the fucking 90s. And I just forget that this is literally a part of our life. The cop would say to Benjamin, like, are you sure that you're gay? Like, how could you even imagine the thought of holding another man like that? And I was like, what the fuck does him being gay have to do with this? I'm sorry. Like, it. Well,
yeah, but he could have also been just saying that,
I guess,
like, not to downplay his feelings. If he was, you know, if he was gay, it's obviously something I know, but he would mention.
As the cop, like, there's just like, what the fuck does that have to do with the investigation?
True. Because they're probably thinking that someone who's not gay did it. So they're like, are you sure?
I don't know. That's just like...
Which just kind of makes it twisted, because if he was gay, like, he was still carrying around a condom because he was still using his penis at certain points, I guess.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. But yeah, it's just crazy to read about like the different time zone time frame that this was in.
Oh.
Just how like I was so shocked. I was like, "Whoa, officer, excuse me. I understand that that may be a false claim, but that doesn't mean you got to like say that it's disgusting to hold another man."
Right. I know the way he worded it, like, to hold another man.
Yeah, like, what the fuck? I was just like, wow, I completely forgot that people were actually like that, and still are to this day, unfortunately. Yeah, all of the bodies had been found in different rooms, and all of them had been raped, sodomized, and then strangled to death.
Yes.
So relatives of Valerie Chalk would actually say that she had been put on a wanted list in November of 1991 before she had disappeared. So after she got put on the wanted list, she completely vanished. She went off the grid. And it would be described in some clippings that I found that all of his victims pretty much had been found at least partially naked. Their hands would be bound behind them, and almost always they would have something stuffed down their throats. Police would also go on to believe that the killer would be extremely skilled in the way that he had pressed just hard enough on their throats to kill them, but not hard enough to break a hyoid bone in their throats, which is apparently extremely fragile and easy to break when you choke someone. The bodies would also always be hurled into corners, shower stalls, and closets when they were found. Like when he says that he hates sex workers, you can tell in the way that he killed that there was such a lack of remorse for these bodies that he would just dispose of them in the grossest places, would not care how he left them. I mean, you could really see the motive behind it of this was just pure. It's so disgusting. One of the things that he had said in his confession with the police was that he pretty much, his goal in life was to exterminate all sex workers.
Oh my God. Mommy issues.
Big mommy issues. Big
and that
mommy
is just
issues.
Not your God-given right to carry out your anger
on fucking
on
others.
Innocent.
Did not. No way did they deserve that at all. Like, fuck you. Fuck you.
Like, you are not God. You can't play God. You don't do that.
Yeah. Who the fuck? Fuck. I can't with this guy. I really can't. It sucks. Like, it doesn't suck. It's like, I get that you had a hard childhood. I really understand the trauma that you went through, and I get that should be validated. But the second that you decided to be this complete asshole and go after women who can't even defend themselves against you, fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. That, no. There are people who have gone through worse and make better life choices than that. And that's when it comes with the whole, like, nature, nurture, whatever. It's just like, no. At the end of the day, it's a fucking choice in my mind. And as soon as you choose to go with that bad shit, like, out of here. Bye. Can't with him.
Because even from the mental illness aspect, like, even if he was mentally ill, you still don't do those things.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm getting back to that point because I have one juror homeboy. He says it great. Gives a great quote, and I'm like, hell yeah, bro. Hell yeah, brother. Hell yeah, brother. So obviously at this time, cops are like running around with their fucking heads cut off, like fucking little chickens. They can't. And they even get a little angel that comes and tries to help them. A little familiar face little familiar face pops back up. You remember our homegirl Donna? So she is fucking fed up. She's over it. She's like, I think I know what's going on, and I'm fucking tired of seeing this. She originally, of course, had been too embarrassed to report the crime when it had initially happened to her to police. But once she started seeing these killings happening, she's like, fuck that shit. fuck this noise. I'm done. I'm not doing this. Something has to happen. So she goes and she gives a report. Like, fucking hardest thing ever, I can only imagine, is to go back, basically relives the trauma that she went through with her ordeal with Atkins, tells the police, and it says...
And months later,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah, having to relive that, like, after you've probably already tried your best to, like, kind of just forget it. And says, like, this is what happened to me. This is his name. She gives the name Tony because it was his middle name, and I believe that's the name that he would go by, I guess.
His street name.
Yeah, his street name. And she would say, there's this guy, Tony. He likes taking women into vacant buildings. He took me into a vacant building, raped and tried to kill me. Here's my name. Here's my address. Here's my phone number. Like, if you need me, I'm here. Like, let's get this motherfucker.
Hell yeah, Donna.
Hell yeah, Donna. Too bad for motherfucking... Sorry.
Don't be sorry.
I'm gonna rant. I'm gonna rant a lot in this episode. Have you not? Fucking let me crack my neck and get into this, because fucking my homegirl Donna did every fucking thing that she could, and the police failed her in every fucking way. Failed society. Failed whatever the fuck their job is even supposed to be, and the other women that died after this, because she put in the report on March 6th. Okay. I understand that we're dealing with a place that has a lot of murders, but it does not excuse the fact that it would take until mid-July to be contacted.
Holy shit. Especially when it's regarding multiple cases.
Multiple murders, multiple women, multiple lives.
This sex worker's reporting something fucking 4 or 5 months after it happened. It's probably nothing.
I get into a quote later that better describes it, but I don't want to lose my place, so I'm just gonna hold this anger, and we're just gonna keep on. Yeah, like, there's a lot of reasons I could say, but it's mainly like they look at the race, they look at her occupation, they look at that, and they just say, it's another sex worker, it's another woman that, like, she doesn't have a family, we don't need to worry about her because society isn't going to care if she goes, which it's, like, fucking ridiculous.
Big fucking exhale on that one.
Ugh, fuck you if you think that any of what I just said is fucking true. You should not be listening to this show because we don't fucking like you. And it would just even get worse because, of course, like, you have 2 cop jurisdictions, 2 different precincts, and they start to play the game of whose micro penis is bigger. Granted, they're both pretty fucking small. And it would basically cost crucial clues to be missed, and it would cost women's lives. End of day. Oh. So Highland Park detectives wanted a suspect list that Detroit detectives had gathered. And Detroit detectives basically wanted, like, everything that Highland wanted. So Detroit was, like, the big daddy because everyone knows Detroit, no one knows Highland. So Detroit is, like, the really big police office, whatever, and then Highland is, like, the really small cops that don't have a lot of resources.
Mom and pop.
Yeah, mom and pop cop shop kind of deal. So, and Highland Sergeant James Dobson would call Detroit and say, hey, okay, we want this information. Let's work together. Let's do a swap. And Detroit would say, okay, let's do it. So they would go meet up at a little swap, go down. Two Detroit detectives would show up, grab all the files, and then basically say, oops, we forgot our files, but we'll call you when we catch him.
What the fuck?
I'm just like, is this really happening? Like, yeah.
Ew, that's totally something out of, like, a show.
I know. I'm just like, you're the fucking asshole. We'll call you when we catch him. I'm like, you're
like, oops.
Oopsie, had poopsie.
Me when I hit a curb.
I'm just like fucking me when I take too large of an edible. I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? I really don't like the Detroit officers. And if I had to pick, like, I'm going for the underdog, because one Detroit officer, he explained himself by saying, I would sure like to close this case. This is exactly how he sounds, by the way. I, not we, not you, but me. There's no better feeling in the world than having some jerk tell you he's killed somebody, and you are the one who stopped the killing. No, asshole.
There's no I in...
It's this narcissistic quote right up above that I just said. Go play back 30 seconds if you missed it. This exact mindset is the reason why more women would be killed. No, you didn't fucking save lives. You took lives. I hope this officer fucking listens to this and knows you killed more women because of this mentality. Because of your inability to fucking work.
You're on the fucking thing alone, right? Like, you're a fucking idiot.
I, not we, not you, but me. Shut the fuck up. Ugh.
I was going to say there's no I in team, but he clearly wasn't on that team mindset.
But he's the guy that goes, there's clearly a me. Yeah. I want to say that Highland should get some credit and be like some kind of like a good cop in the situation, but honestly, I don't really think so at the end of the day, because of course at both of these precincts would tell their supervisors, oh, everyone's fully cooperating, there's no problem. So like I get that you did it dirty, but at the same time, like Highland didn't do anything to like absolve the problem. They were just like, whatever, it's fine. So I don't agree with that. They probably
couldn't do much.
I get it, but like, fuck, whatever. At least like make a fucking record of it, other than in a fucking article after the whole thing has been solved. So either way, it would take basically Highland Park investigators until July to get a report of Donna's experience, and apparently Detroit never got their copy, even though apparently it was said that it was sent there. So that was like their excuse for why. And a Detroit officer would say, this is where my anger comes back. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's easy with 20/20 hindsight to say, oh, she's the one. But we had tons of prostitutes upstairs telling us they had been nearly strangled.
Okay,
so why don't you fucking do your job and make sure that these sex workers aren't strangled? Just a thought. Just a fucking thought.
Just a fucking thought for food for thought. Whatever.
Yeah. Obviously, this officer is talking fucking out of his ass and can eat shit. I'm just so upset.
Fucking eat your own fucking nasty cop shit.
Yeah, because meanwhile, while he's spewing this sewer garbage nonsense bullshit, on April 9th of 1992, 28-year-old Brenda Mitchell's lifeless body would be found in an abandoned 2-story house on Woodward in Highland Park. Now, she had been found completely naked, aside from a thin scarf that would be left wrapped around her neck, and she would also have some blood coming out of her mouth.
Oh.
Now, she had been gone missing. She had been declared missing 4 days earlier when she had gone out with her 2 kids to the store.
Oh, no.
And I really tried to get more information on, like, did she just vanish and her 2 kids couldn't find her? Or, like, did she at least make it back home? That's all I could get. And it's like, I'm sorry, shit. I really wish I could give more information, but of course these women are sex workers and they're black, so you know that the media didn't give 2 shits about them. So I really tried hard, guys, but like, fuck.
My mind is just,
it's so
theorizing
sad. So
on what happened. Like,
so
those like, children.
And it's even more upsetting because her death had originally been ruled an overdose. So when they found her body, they of course went in and they did the autopsy. And when they do the autopsy, they had found a lethal amount of drugs in her system and it had been put in there prior to her death.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, they just saw that and they said, oh, there's a lethal dose. There's a naked woman. We don't really care. We're not going to investigate it any further. It was a lethal overdose. I know that there was one guy in the Highland Park that had kind of like made a mental note maybe and said this maybe potentially could have been it, but it would ultimately be Benjamin Atkins saying like, oh no, I killed Brenda Michelle. And that would be like when they realize, oh, she's one of the victims.
Right. Ugh.
It would only be days later, on April 15th of 1992, when the death toll would hit 9, and 27-year-old Vicki Beasley Brown's beaten and broken body would be found in a small sunlit closet in an empty apartment building on Highland Avenue.
Oh my God. So many vacant buildings, first of all.
It's like a huge vacant strip where I guess like a lot of the homeless like to live,
hang out,
and also like I really don't remember when Detroit went bankrupt, but I think this was definitely the beginning stages of it,
right?
So a lot of like businesses and whatnot were going out,
going under.
Yeah, I could totally be wrong, but don't quote me on that, but I think that's just my guess. Now Vicki Beasley Brown had last been seen alive on March 25th. And she had been found April 15th, so it's like almost a month. Now, unfortunately, we only descend deeper into fucking madness because we have the mayor at the time, Mayor Lindsay Porter. Great guy. No, he's not. So he would talk to profilers.
I was like, yay, one great guy in this.
No. Because see, he would talk to profilers, and they would say like, oh, I really think since a lot of these killings are happening in the Highland Park Woodward Avenue corridor area, which I like take a hint at what this dude's nickname is, like, yeah. It's this area. And so he was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that he lives right around here. There's no way that he would move out and dump all these bodies here. It would make more sense that he lives here. And yeah. So the mayor goes, cool. And then he goes to the public on TV and goes, the killer just dumps the bodies in Highland Park. He doesn't live here.
What the fuck? Okay, no.
I'm like, all right, fine. That's great. That's great communication skills we got going on down here. The cops, like I had mentioned before, were also getting like a shit ton of tips from the public, and it would go every which way. Like one of the stories that I read about was how one wife who was a nurse was like, you hate women so much, I bet you're the one who's slaying all those women. And the husband was so upset, and he was like, yeah, I am. And then she went and called the cops. And they spent like half a day following that lead, and obviously the guy was like, no, I was just fucking upset. But I'm like,
oh God.
Don't, even in anger, don't admit that you're a serial killer. Just not.
Well, yeah, it's fucked up, but like good for her for at least calling the cops.
I know. I mean, like, yeah, she's a freaking true crime lover for sure.
Yeah.
But so yeah, it took the detectives like half a day to figure out that was false, and that's just like one tip. So they have a lot of stuff going on, and obviously it's taking a lot of time. But they would miss yet another attempt during this chaos to catch the killer when in mid-May there was a guy that Donna knew, and he actually went to the station to re-report her rape and attack for a second time, to basically say, hey, my friend Donna came in, this happened to her, we think we know who the killer is, like, can y'all do something about it?
Hello, like, ding ding ding.
And I just fucking, they didn't do anything about
Ding
it.
a ding dong ding.
I'm just like, how? I get one is maybe okay, I guess, understandable, but twice, come on, guys. And of
Two's
course,
a party.
Fuck. And on June 15th, the 10th body would be discovered when the partially decomposed corpse of Joanne O'Rourke would be found inside the shell of a building at Woodward and Rickton in Highland Park. Now, of course, officials are becoming desperate at this point. They have a guy who has like no remorse for killing women, has no time frame for when he's gonna do it. He's just like going back and forth. Like, we don't even know what day these women are actually being killed on, so we don't know what rate he's really even going. It's madness at this point. It doesn't help that there's also like a huge primary election going on at the time for sheriff, so it kind of just clouds a lot of, I think, the motive behind the case.
That's why Detroit wanted to handle it.
Yeah. So I know Sheriff Robert Ficano, whatever, I don't really care if I say it right or wrong, but he would get his deputies and basically send them door to door asking for information. Little did they know they had the fucking clue in their laps the whole entire time, but it would really just kind of go this way. Nothing was coming about it, and they would soon get an agent by the name of Paul Lindsay from the FBI that would join and basically help them get to Donna's tip. He came in and was like, okay, Detroit, you're being a little bit of a bitch. You need to back off. Okay, me and my other agent, we're going to comb through all of these tips ourselves. And that's basically, I guess, when they would notice Donna's tip. I don't know if this article that I was reading was trying to paint them in a good light, because I also read in another article that Donna like just straight up went to the cops herself and like knocked on the window. Because so what would happen was that they would go on to suspect a man by the name of Anthony Starks, because Donna would say, hey, a guy by the name of Tony had attacked me. And he kind of fit. He was checking the little check mark boxes. So he was a former psychiatric patient who frequented the homeless kitchen. And he would also like love to hang around sex workers, but I mean, it was more so for the sex, not the killing.
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, baby.
He's just the original kind of sex, drugs, and rock and roll type of dude. So they would actually raid his home and find nothing, but that they didn't stop from there. They would like pursue him further. And so he had actually taken a woman to an abandoned house where the second body, Bertha Mason, had been found, which, okay, yes, I do understand. That looks very, very, very suspicious.
Yeah, but...
And so cops would like wait a little bit, and they're like, oh my God, he's probably in there killing her right now. So they would storm in and basically find them like naked and having just finished the coitus, you know. So they were like, oh, I don't know if this is the guy.
But and how often do those abandoned buildings and vacant buildings get used by everyone. In that homeless and sex working community?
Yeah.
Because it seems to be surrounding that.
It's like a pretty popular strip for that.
Yeah. So like all of them are using their using their resources.
Exactly. So like in the other article that I was reading, I think it was like when they were raiding Anthony Stark's home that Donna would go up to the police and be like, yo, you're raiding the wrong fucking house, my dudes. Like,
go
this
Donna.
I'm like, you got it all fucking wrong. This is what's happening. Like, take me in. I will help you out. So I think that this is really what happened, because the cops clearly don't know how to do their fucking job clearly. And it was at this point that Donna was brought in. She had actually gone into a lineup with Anthony Starks and said, like, that's not fucking him. And finally they were like, okay, we'll listen to you. So who's this Tony that you're talking about? And she's like, I'll fucking show you. Let's go. So she would actually get into the cop car and basically ride around Detroit and Highland Park looking for Benjamin. Now, it would take a while. It would take a few weeks. But finally, she looks out of her window of the cop car and sees Benjamin Atkins on Woodward in the Cass Corridor area. And she goes, oh my God, that's him. So on August 21st of 1992, Benjamin Atkins would finally be arrested and brought into questioning by detectives. So he would give them the story about there is no way that he would have been able to do it because he was gay and he was not interested in women. When the cops would ask about the scratches and bite marks that they noticed that appeared along his chest, he merely claimed that he was a sex worker himself and that he also had a boyfriend.
Oh.
And this is like, again, when I read in the article, like, oh, how could you stand to have another man in your arms after that? And I was just like, fuck you. So it would take over 12 hours of investigation and of interrogation and denial. But finally, it would be when Detective Sergeant Ronald Saunders would look at Atkins and say, "You've never had a father. I have a son exactly your age. You need to get this one off your chest. Talk to me." Benjamin Atkins would finally look at him, completely break down, and say, "Okay, I'll tell you. I did them all." So he raved.
That detective pulled the right card.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Like, knew exactly where to hit him. So Benjamin would waive his right to a lawyer. And as he ate his way through 5 cheeseburgers, he would go down the list of victims. I know. Sorry. Like your cholesterol, sweetie.
Like, I get it, you're hungry, but if you eat too much, you're just going to get sick.
Think about the calories. So it's while eating all of these cheeseburgers that he would go down the list and basically name all of his victims, including ones that had not even been discovered yet.
Oh.
So,
shit.
What?
Oh, no, just to him, like, naming victims that haven't been discovered, you know? Just all shit to that, because, I mean, thankfully he did that to at least help them get found or whatever, but just, like, fuck. There's more, you know?
Yeah. Technically, I get really confused here. Technically, his 11th and 12th victim, and I say 12th because there is one woman's name, LaTanya Shawanda Smith, who is 29 years old, who is mentioned in these articles. She's not mentioned as one who was killed, but I know they say beaten. So I'm not sure if after this he admitted, oh, I beat her and I didn't kill her, or
right. And she didn't come forward, like,
yeah,
to
like
report it.
I get really, really confused with what LaTanya's story is, and I try to get some detail on it, but it's that's a big gray area. But either way, for sure, his 11th and final victim, final-ish, question mark,
right.
He would describe as 21-year-old Oceana Weimer. And I believe he had said that he had dumped her body in some kind of secret underground closet that no one could really, or it wasn't underground, but just some kind of like deserted closet. And as soon as he said this, police would go to where he said her body was and find her decomposing body.
Ugh.
So he would tell detectives how it pained him that he never had a father growing up in life, and it was basically his mother who drove him to have a deep-seated hatred towards women. And Benjamin essentially could no longer suppress this, and he just had to act on his feelings. Ugh. If you even call it that.
Right. Urges.
Urges.
Sick urges.
What does Dexter call it? The darkness. Dark passenger. Oh, I'm so excited for the season. Sorry, I just had to say that. Benjamin would say that it was the crack and cocaine that would essentially give him the boost that he needed to act out on his hatred, and in his words, exterminate as many prostitutes as he could.
Oh my god.
Like,
ew, that E word. Exterminate. It's just gross.
I can't with this guy.
Like, you're not the fucking Ghostbusters of sex
he
workers.
Like has such a god it's not even a god complex, but I'm just
but
like,
of just like acting like you would even be able to do that in the first place. Okay.
Well, because listen what he says next. So during his confession, he would look down at his hands and look up at detectives and say, see these big hands I got? It's always the same. Both thumbs over the Adam's apple and fingers interlocked behind her neck. He would continue about how over the months of his killing spree, he had perfected his technique and that he had learned how to keep a woman on the verge of consciousness while raping and murdering her. Fucking monster. Monster.
Ew.
Monster. This isn't
So
this isn't mental illness. This
conscious.
is just him, like, just not having a fucking mind.
Yeah, I mean, that is just him being a complete monster.
Like, the amount of chills I get reading this, it's disgusting.
Because he specifically took into account his methods.
Yes.
And the detail of him interlocking his thumbs over the Adam's apple. It's just sickening.
He would say that, like, he had used the same method to throw off detectives, but I'm kind of confused because I'm like, if you use the same method, wouldn't that make it, like, easier? But I don't know. He had a thing with, like, using the same type of method. And even after, so the whole Donna getting away thing, like, really, really got to him. And he had even come up with a dead for sure method where he would essentially check the woman's pulse after he was done strangling them. And then he would check their heartbeat, and then essentially push their stomach to ensure that all of the air was out of their lungs.
Okay.
And, like, basically to make sure that
they
weren't
dead.
getting back up.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And those are specific steps. And
He said he did, like, each time.
In the process. It's like...
It's so methodic. He definitely had his...
That's what I was getting to.
He definitely...
Sorry.
No, he for sure had his ritual that it's just to think if the cops didn't step in if Donna didn't step in when she did to really solve this case for everyone, to think of the amount of damage that would have happened afterwards is astronomical. I mean,
it would have kept happening.
He was on a complete, like, seeing red bloodbath.
He was on a roll. And okay, so Donna should have earned a badge.
Donna should have become sheriff of the fucking police department. I'm just saying. It's just like, what the fuck? So he would even tell he would speak on the murder of Juanita Harvey. I am so sorry. I probably said her name wrong. It is Juanita Harvey. I probably said it wrong. I'm sorry.
Well, Juanita sounds right.
No, I think the first time I
Harvey
said it,
then?
I did not say Juanita.
I feel like you did.
Oh,
Just a
I
little
did?
Fast. Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, I was just like, wow, that name finally clicked in my mind. Speaking of the murder of Juanita Harvey, he would tell investigators that I had never truly planned to kill her. After raping her, after having sex with her, and hating her for being a woman, I simply had a desire to kill her for being a woman. I just wanted to hate her and cause her harm.
Evil.
Ugh.
Evil.
I can't with your hair looking like that too. Like a Charles Mason kind of vibe. Have you seen the TikTok where it's like, be cute, it's cool to be silly and goofy, and then it's like the video of Charles Mason in his prison suit, Mason, whatever, and he's like just like making silly faces, and I'm like, ooh, okay. So Benjamin would go on to say that the reason for killing all of these women was so that they wouldn't be able to identify or press charges against him. And of the police interrogation, the police would say that Atkins was actually very well spoken and had a rather large vocabulary. And they would also talk about how Atkins had actually considered turning himself in before he was arrested.
I'm sure
overall,
he considered it, but
what was he gonna do? It probably
the other option weighed out.
like, yeah, I consider not to have a glass of wine every day. Do I still do it? Yeah.
Yeah, I considered having a monstrous glass of mimosa this morning at 11:45 a.m. Did I do it? Yes.
Hell yeah, I did.
But sometimes you don't always do what you consider doing.
Exactly. Okay? Overall, the confession would be 87 pages long. Yeah. Fucking long.
Handwritten?
Ooh, I would hope not.
Never mind.
I think that they would type it.
They probably recorded, right?
Yeah.
Wait, 87 pages of transcript.
Like someone had to type that shit out. Fucking long.
I don't know. Never mind.
So Benjamin Atkins was 23 at the time and would be arraigned in the 3rd Circuit Court in suburban Westland on 1 charge of murder and then 2 other murder charges on the 36th District Court in Detroit. And he would later get the 8 charges later on. This was just at the very beginning of the investigation. So like I had mentioned earlier before, all of the women have been found along a 1.4 mile stretch near Woodland Highland Park in Detroit, which for my people who are not of the US of A, 1.4 miles.
Or honestly, like, to be honest, like, I know you're converting it, but even being from the US of A, I don't know shit geographically.
No, I don't either.
Well, I know you don't know your distances and directions.
Do you know who we're talking to?
But geography was never my strong suit. Because
well, you
they just
did
instilled so much Texas in us from a young age. It's like...
Yeah. Well, you did say that they converted weight into ounces the other day, so... I know that we can't really trust your opinion, but for those who are not in the US of A, 1.4 miles is 2.25-ish kilometers. So really not, like, if I ran it, yeah, I would be fucking dying, but in retrospect, it's really not that long of a distance.
Yeah.
All of the women would be discovered in an abandoned building, and many of these women would be sex workers or drug addicts. During the trial, over 150 people, including relatives of the victims, would appear as witnesses for the prosecution and at the court hearing. During the trial, Atkins would again confess to all of the murderers, but claim that he was insane, and his lawyer would demand leniency on Atkins due to his violent childhood and drug addiction problems, and essentially blamed Benjamin Atkins of having mental, emotional, and behavioral problems that stemmed from all of this. Which essentially brings us back to the beginning of our story with juror Deborah Evans and her little moral dilemma. Now, this is basically everything that she's heard, and she's sitting here wondering, am I really about to send this man to jail for the rest of his life, or do I give him leniency based on his upbringing and the trials that he had to go through in his young adult, or in his childhood? It would be another juror by the name of B.J. Miller that would give this quote.
Ooh.
That would essentially change her mind and the rest of the case.
Okay, I'm ready, because I think I'm right there with him. Because when he first mentioned it, I was like, okay, I could see why she would think that, maybe without obviously having all the details, because it was at the beginning. But, anyways, yes.
Ready. Long story short, yes. So juror B.J. Miller would say, rape is a violent act. It's not craziness. Murder is a violent act. It's not craziness. They're still human beings. They deserved to live. After hearing that, Deborah Evans changed her mind, and Atkins' fate would be sealed. Benjamin Tony Atkins would be convicted on 11 counts of first-degree murder for the brutal slaying of 11 women in just a 9-month span, and 1 count of first-degree sexual conduct for the rape of Donna. in total, he would be sentenced to 11 life sentence terms to be served concurrently. He would be acquitted, though, for the attempted murder
What
of
the
Donna.
fuck? She was the one lady with a living experience and proof. Okay.
Yeah, I really don't know how they couldn't think that he wouldn't kill her, but I mean, it's not like he's gonna get out of jail, so I guess. But at the same time, it's kind of like, wow, really.
I don't know. She seemed very, almost not completely selfless, because she did have his attempt on her, but she really wanted to help catch the guys because it was happening to other women and could have happened to more. So I feel like maybe she could be or would be happy with the idea of what he did get sentenced with. But we never know. Like, there might be that small, like, little hole where it's like he could have. Where's my justice? Yeah,
I'm not able to find a quote afterward of Donna saying anything about it, but from what I can imagine, I mean, Donna really was intent on not talking about her experience until the murders started happening, and she was like, no, I need to speak up because I can actually do something about this. So I really think that she was acting selfless in that she wasn't thinking of herself. She was thinking of the other women at hand, because she, knew what they had went through in a sense and just really wanted to help them. So I in my mind, I think she would have been completely okay with the fact that he would have been put in jail, and if that charge didn't happen, like, I could imagine, but she just seemed really adamant on, like, it was the victims that she cared about, not so much herself in that sense. So Donna is really, like, I can't speak highly enough of her. She really went above and beyond to help others at the toll of, like, reliving that trauma that she went through herself. So one jury would decide 3 murders and a second jury would decide 8 murders. I kind of get confused on who's who, but it was basically 2 juries that would decide the sentences altogether. And there was actually no physical evidence given. It was solely Atkins' testimony, or it was solely Atkins' confession and Donna's testimonies that landed him in jail. But I mean, it's not like he gave some kind of false confession. During his confession, he gave really, really detailed, intimate details of, like, what the victims were wearing, down to their clothing color, like, jewelry that they were wearing. So it's not like he was coerced into saying that he did it or anything like that. Like, he was actually giving evidence to say that he did it. As the verdict was read, which, fun fact, not so fun fact, it took over 10 minutes to read all of the verdicts, including, like, all of the victims' names and whatnot. Atkins, who would be 25 at the time that he was charged. Yeah, it takes a really long time for this. And that was one of
I thought he was. Like, I know it all started from an early age.
Started when he was, like, 21,
yeah, so
22.
I just forget how young he was.
Yeah. So and it took him so 23 was when he was arrested. So I guess he was like 22-ish when it started. And it would take until he was around 25 for him to finally be put in jail, which it was one of the criticisms of the case. But I mean, that's like a lot of murder cases, unfortunately, just take a really long time to go. Like the trial itself takes months. It's not really a
criticism, because even if they're arrested right away, they can be held in jail for 2 to 5 years, or like anywhere from months to 5 years to actually await sentencing. So it's really the court system.
Yeah, crazy long amount of time. It would be said that he would show no reaction when they gave him his sentence, and that the deputy next to him said that his only concerns at the time were basically getting a cigarette.
Same.
Yeah. Now, if there are any serious true crime junkies out there, because I was not one of them, this is actually going on around the same time as the Gainesville, Florida killings. It's like a college apartment killings. So there were actually 5 women that were killed in a span of 3 days in the same exact apartment complex near the Gainesville College, I believe. I forget the name of the college, but it was in Gainesville, Florida. And this happened pretty much at around the same exact time. So this was in the news and pretty much a really big reason as to why this case got buried. And you would think, like, oh, if people are freaking out over 5 women, they're really going to freak out over 11 women. Well, like I had said previously, they were sex workers. They were, and not in my opinion, but just in society and the media, is like not important and not worth mentioning. So when these 5 college women who happen to be white,
the victims,
the 11, yes, and these 5 women who were in college just happened to be white, and all of them were murdered. This just really overpowered all media presence, and like, so these slangs just basically didn't get mentioned.
I hate the media.
.com. It's really shitty how start it. So the presiding recorder's court judge, I don't even know what that means, but his name was David Kerwin. Of this whole issue that was going on, he would say, the contrast between this case and the one in Gainesville, Florida is very interesting. I can't help but conclude that the fact that these poor African American women addicted to crack cocaine with histories of prostitution made them different to people than 5 Caucasian college students. It's inescapable to me, that disparity. When it comes to crime against poor folk in urban America, nobody in mainstream America really cares. Which, it's so sad how right on the money that fucking quote is. Like, it's so sad. Like, and we see it with cases all around the world. Like, we don't care unless it's right next to us. We don't care unless it's happening to, I guess, like, people that look like us. It's just ridiculous how all of these crimes, like, you see how little, like, we cared so much about the Casey Anthony case, and then, like, Brittany, her case just like got.
Did you see that meme too? Well, it wasn't a meme, but it was like a picture of both of them. No. Brittany next to Casey Anthony, and the caption was, one of these women lives free and is free to have children, and it's not Britney Spears. How does that make you feel?
I wasn't talking about Britney. Not Britney Spears, but yes, I was talking about hold on. I was talking about the Brittany Williams case where she was the foster child who Kim Parker, episode 19 if you haven't checked it out. But it's but it's that too, but it's just like crazy, the disparities between if you have something that happens to a white person versus a black, the outcome of it, the publicity behind it, it's just disgusting.
Completely unfortunate.
Shouldn't happen.
Exactly.
Like, everyone is human. Everyone deserves the right, like, equal amount of respect and equal amount of fucking, like, if your child is gone, if people are missing from your family, you deserve to have every resource available to you to try and find that person. It's just something about that has fucking got to change. So after his conviction, Benjamin Atkins would be transferred to Charles Egler Reception and Guidance Center in Jackson, but due to health issues, because like I had said previously, he does have HIV, and it's really sketchy on the details of it. I don't know how long he had it or whatnot, but it was at this time that it was really affecting his health, and due to this, they would have to move him to Duane Waters Hospital. And on September 17th of 1997, Benjamin Atkins would actually die in a prison hospital after contracting an HIV-related infection.
Damn.
He was only 4 years into his 11 life sentence and was just 29 years old at the time. So, yeah.
It's pretty young.
It is crazy because he's just, like, he's so fucking young. It's really...
Yeah,
wow.
like, of course, we'd all love to see him suffer in prison, but that that
God
disease...
had other plans.
Yeah, it really... Sometimes, well, back then, not so much. Sometimes you can live long with it. Sometimes it just doesn't happen, and
yeah, I think
it really takes over.
I just think him being homeless, he just didn't have a chance. Like, you need to have money, unfortunately, to survive that kind of disease. So, of his death, Michael Reynolds, who had actually prosecuted Benjamin, would go on to say that while no one takes joy in another's death, even one who has committed such heinous crimes, at least those who lost loved ones at Mr. Atkins' hands can take comfort in knowing that he will never be released back into society. And due to the rapid amount of attacks that he dealt to Detroit, he would be dubbed the nickname America's Fastest Serial Killer by the FBI. And like I've said time and time again, I really do like to try and end talking about the victims, but unfortunately this is just one of these cases where the victims are not highlighted. They are really ignored, which is very unfortunate. But I was able to find a few quotes regarding the victim's family after Atkins was sentenced. So Rosemary Williams, who was the mother of Bertha Jean Johnson, who was the one who was 5 months pregnant at the time, had this to say of the trial. She would say, "They should cut his hands off. He killed my daughter with those hands. They should kill him." She would go on to describe how her heart was filled, or how her heart pounded with hatred, and how she despised watching him walk into that courtroom. She would say, I don't care what my daughter was or what she did. She had a right to live." Yvonne Whitaker, who was a sister of one of the victims, would say, "I just feel so sad. I told her for years that something was going to happen to her, but my sister was a human being. They all were. They didn't deserve this." Gloria Beasley, the mother of victim Vicki Beasley Brown, who was 42, would say, "This was blood, sweat, and tears. We've had enough killings in this city. The thing that bothered me most was the very brutal way he killed, going after girls that were tiny and small, as though he was hunting defenseless girls." So yeah, I just want to end off by giving a list of all of the victims' names just in remembrance of them. So Donna, and that is a pseudonym. That's not her real name, though you can find it online if you really want to. I just want to give respect to her. So she was attacked in October of 1991, and she was 36 at the time. We have Debbie Ann Friday. And she survived, yes. We have Debbie Ann Friday, who is 30. She was found on December 14th of 1991 in Highland Park. We have Bertha Jean Mason, 26, who was found on December 30th of 1991. She was 5 months pregnant at the time and left behind 3 children. Patricia Cannon George was 36 and was found on January 3rd of 1992 in Detroit. Vicki Truelove was 39 and was found on January 25th of 1992 in Detroit. Valerie Chalk was 34 and found on February 17th of 1992 in Monterey Hotel, room 68 of Highland Park. Juanita Hardy was 23 and found at Monterey Motel, room 35 on February 17th of 1992 in Highland Park. The Jane Doe, who has yet to be identified to this day, was found at Monterey Motel room 18 on February 17th of 1992, and she was aged 15 around that time, or guessed to be around the age of 15. Brenda Mitchell was 38 and found on April 9th of 1992 in Highland Park. She was the mother to an 18-year-old son. Vicky Beasley Brown was 43 and found on April 15th of 1992 in Highland Park. Joanna O'Rourke was 40 and found on June 15th of 1992 in Highland Park. Oceana Weimer was 22 and found on August 21st of 1992 in Highland Park. And LaTanya Shawanda Smith, 29. And I'm really not sure what the status was with her, but I know in some sources that she was labeled a victim and was labeled as the 12th one. Either attacked or not. But yeah, that is the brutal slayings of the 11 women done by Benjamin Atkins, aka the Woodward Corridor Killer.
My ears hurt after that one.
Taking the time, like typing it was one thing, but actually taking the time to say all of those names.
Yeah.
Crazy. So heartbreaking, so sad. It's like,
and the time frame,
like 9 months that all of this, more than a body a month. How? I can't.
And, you know, part of me is like, fuck media coverage, who cares? But it really does help sometimes in spreading the word and helping investigations.
Yeah,
so it's almost necessary. So the fact that cases like these get buried and don't receive the same amount of attention as others because of the color of victim's skin and the color of the murderer's skin, like, and of like where it's placed,
the occupation
where
of
it took place, and
the occupation of the victims
and
the
lives of the victims. It like no 5 lives outweigh 11 in any way.
And even then, it's like, in what world do we respect 5 lives and not respect 11? Like, either way, all of these lives that were lost were tragic and should have not happened. But we need to give them both the same amount of respect. Yeah. Because
what's
at
up
the
with
end
Boston
of the
media?
Yeah, it's like these Detroit.
Jesus. What's up with Detroit media?
It's like, at the end of the day, like, these are fucking, you have families. And even, like, so fucking what if they don't have families that care about them? Like, I care about them. I want them to have someone to care about them, to say, hey, we need to find these girls. It doesn't matter what they do. Like, no one in this world should go uncared for or unnoticed, or if something bad happens to them, the cops shouldn't reach out and help. Like, that's their fucking job. That's what we hire them. We pay them whatever fucking amount we want to. Like, it's just all this stupid shit that's going on right now. It's like, we want to fight. These cops want to fight for their wage. Well, why don't they fight for the wage by fucking doing their jobs first?
Period.
I'm sorry.
Period.
I'm just like,
what she
when
said.
you start working and like doing your jobs right, then we'll start this whole fucking argument of, okay,
well, it's
how much
like
should you
not
be paid?
even about doing it right, but how about just trying to take it seriously? Like, that's step
just trying
one.
to like take into account that that's someone's fucking daughter at the end of the day.
Else are you
like,
there
what would you want
for?
for yours? Yeah,
take it seriously. Jeez.
I can't. But yeah. That's it. That's the case. I really wish I could have given you more on those women. I also need to get better at digging. One day I will be, and maybe we can do an update. But until then, yeah. Cheers to one day me learning how to properly look up the Google. Because just like Googling their names and like trying to dig up anything was so sad. It was so morbid. I couldn't. I had to stop after a while because I was like, wow, we just really don't care.
Cheers to sex workers not being subjected to a forgotten category, or
Amen.
You know, seen as humans who aren't cared for or cared about, or that would be
anything other than fucking
forgotten.
human beings.
So
Like,
And
hello,
cheers
sex
to-
work has been the #1 industry since all of time. Let's
Since,
give
like,
them
a
a
long
little bit
time,
more respect
okay?
than that.
like
Okay,
a
it's like
really
the
long
number.
time.
It's been the #1 job for a very long time. We need a little bit more respect for it, okay?
And everyone's guilty, so
Yeah, let's not, okay? Can't with it. So, God, guys, fuck. Sorry. It's always such an awkward way to end these.
yeah. Thank you for
very
killing my boozaz.
Yeah, the booze is gone. So, if you want more boozes, follow us on TikTok, Twitter, Insta, YouTube. I think that's it, right? Yeah.
RARW podcast.
I loved that. That was so good. You got to do that every time now. All right, and until next time, guys. Bye.
Bye.